Perfect.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about the idea of imagining your life as a movie. So we're going to do this because it can help us create a healthy level of detachment from the ego, from reality, and from our worldly obsessions and desires. And also it can help us develop mental strength, focus, and greater peace when dealing with the difficulties of life. And if we view ourselves as the star in a movie, which is our lives, then it can help us be more intentional about who we are and how we show up to the scenes of our life. So, and this concept is an old concept. Even Shakespeare himself said, all the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players, and they have their exits and entrances, and we play many different parts. So let's first of all discuss this. What are your thoughts on why is it a good idea to view your life like a movie? Like, what are the best possible outcomes if we treat our life in this way? What do you think?
Well, I would say like in a movie, usually we anticipate like the endings and things like that, but it doesn't always go as planned or what you had envisioned. So it's good because I feel like it creates like non-attachment to the outcome, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And that's a great idea. And we can accept the struggles as a necessary part of what keeps the story interesting. And that can give us greater patience and acceptance with not knowing how things turn out, right? Because the past and the present is never really fully appreciated and understood until we're way in the future. That goes for our lives and that goes for movies. But I feel like we can accept that more if we view our life like a movie. If it were too easy to grasp how it's all going to work out, it would be boring. It's like a movie when you can predict and you'd be like, oh, I knew they were going to say that. I knew that was going to happen. Right?
Yeah.
So I think this model of looking at our lives like a movie, it just helps us accept the difficulties of life the same way we accept the difficulties of the main characters in a movie, because without such difficulties, it would be insanely boring.
Yes.
And also it helps us to accept it as an unreal dream play. Like, it's not the ultimate reality. So we can accept the unreality of reality. We'll get to that a little bit later on, but any other thoughts on why it's a good idea to view life like a movie?
Well, I think it keeps it like lighthearted. I don't know about you, but when I think about like movies, I think about like laying back, having popcorn, and just not being so serious.
Yeah, exactly. So and that's especially important to do when things don't go our way in life. Because if you're an actor or an actress in a movie and you forget your true identity before acting out this role, you'll be anxious about the drama of the story, right? But then if you can kind of like distance yourself and remember like, oh, hey, this isn't my true identity, then it can help us just relax into the scenes of our life a little bit more, and we don't suffer as much, knowing that there is something going on before and beyond this human story, right? So great suggestion. Anything else?
I think it's cool too, because when you view yourself like as a character in a movie, it can always like change. Like there's different characters in a movie and there's different reasons or roles for each character. So I think it also gives like viewing your life like that can also help you like understand that like it's okay to adapt your character or your role, or maybe you're a different person in that scene and whatnot. So I think that's a cool way of looking at it as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it helps us look at life more impersonally rather than getting too contractive and hyper focused on our likes and dislikes of our life circumstances. It helps us zoom out and see things from a higher perspective, and see that there's more of a big picture going on, which takes us out of the snares of egoism. So also, I think it just makes it more fun too. It's like if you just wake up every day and you think, the hero of your life story just woke up, like it can give a more empowering purpose.
Yeah.
so I think that can help as well. Anything else you would add to this?
I think we pretty much covered it. It all comes down to the same theme of like just having like a better outlook and zooming out.
Yeah, yeah. I think too, it helps us be able to let go. So, we don't get too obsessed with fleeting worldly joys. Like, don't build the mansion of your happiness in this material of existence. Like, this isn't the place to lay down for perfection, because everything comes and goes in this reality. I think being able to let go is a psychological necessity, because no matter what our life circumstances, we have to let go of everything in this life eventually anyway. And we need to figure out a way to make that okay. And if we get too over identified with this reality, it's harder to let go, right? If that's what we're telling ourselves, that this is all it is, and we know we have to let go, then that can create an anxiety within us. So I think it can be helpful for that. I think it also can give us a greater awareness and appreciation for a divine director. Like sometimes people are bitter at this idea of a divine director, but the thing is, like, when a movie takes an unkindly plot twist and goes against a main character, we don't judge the moment and get mad at the director and say, oh, Steven Spielberg shouldn't have made this happen to the main character. It's not fair. That main character is a nice person. It's like, no, we just know, hey, this director is making things interesting now. And we know that a setback is nothing but a setup for a comeback. And so if we can view our lives in the same way, we can develop an admiration and respect for the divine producer who sees across all space and time, rather than a bitterness or a harsh judgment, right? So, I mean, in summary, I think healthy detachment to this reality helps us do a better job of how we show up in this reality. We don't want to take it too seriously, but we do want to take our role seriously, right? Too much attachment creates too much fear. Viewing it as though it's a passing movie or human story helps us insulate ourselves from those kinds of dark emotions and thoughts. Now, let's go on to discussion point number 2. Discussion point number 2. How is this reality truly like a movie? Right? Like, how is it actually like a movie? What are all the different ways? What are your thoughts?
How is it like a movie? I would say, I guess, in terms of like character roles, like having like your main characters, like the people surrounding you and such. And usually, like in a movie, there's a problem or like a plot, and then, you know, like something you're trying to solve in some way, shape, or form. And I think that's how life goes too. It's kind of like, there's something, like there's a challenge or an obstacle, and then, there's the main characters playing in the movie and how you overcome it. Like the hero
Absolutely. So
story.
love it. Love it. We have the heroes, we have the villains, we have the supporting cast. All of us
Right.
are both audience and actors, right? And the thrill of the tale is to find out how the good people will get the better of the bad. And there are cast changes. Just about every 120 years or so, the entire cast changes on the stage of the human life, right? So,
Right.
and various characters take their turns on the stage. Where are they now? Like, a lot of them have come and gone. How about this?
Yeah, never thought of that.
I think a lot of this is just a matter of degree, the difference between our reality and a movie. Movies are 2-dimensional. This world is 3-dimensional, right? It's just a difference of 1 dimension, and hologram theory tells us that this 3-dimensional world is kind of unreal. It's a hologram, and that the only reality is the information used to create it. Just like throwing in a DVD creates a movie when you play it, there's some sort of DVD of information that had to exist before we manifested as we are, right? Also, like, another part of the difference of degree is that movies, the totality of our experience in movies is true to 2 senses, vision and hearing. The totality of our experience in our worldly reality is true to 5 senses: vision, hearing, taste, touch, and smell, right? However, we know there's so much going on in reality that are beyond our senses. We've got radio waves going through the air. There's the spectrum of sound that we can't pick up. There's dim lights and really bright lights that we can't pick up. And so there's some smells we can't smell, so we're not getting the total picture of reality. If we were, we would see the earth as just like rivers and glaciers of electrons, but we're just getting bits and pieces of it. But basically our senses keep bouncing back these fictions to us. And if you saw a car as just a bunch of buzzing electrons, you'd probably get hit by it. So we need to kind of create this perception in order to play out our role properly. But how about this too? Have you ever looked really up close at a TV and just noticed it's nothing but pixels? I did this as a kid. Have you ever done that?
I was going to say, as a kid at my nana's house, yes.
Yeah, when we're curious as a kid, we look at it up close and we realize that these movies are just pixels of light, 2-dimensional pixels. However, up close, everything in our reality is unreal as well. If you look at it close enough, it's just molecules, which are basically 3D pixels. Now, these pixels arrange themselves so that at a distance, it looks like a coherent object. But everything in both movie reality and this reality loses its truthfulness when we look at it up close. Right?
Yeah.
And we might argue that there must be some sort of divine director behind it all, because there must be something that has taken these undifferentiated molecules and arranged them into coherent objects. There has to be an intention behind it and an intelligence behind it. It can't just be happenstance that everything has taken on these intelligent forms. It must be held together by the ideas of a creator's mind, right? So it's a vibratory dream motion picture, of the divine director's thoughts on the screen of time and space and human consciousness. It's being held together by something. But how about this? Have you ever considered how everything here is structurally evanescent, just like a movie? Everything is kind of impermanent. Nothing holds its form for good. Everything is transient and fleeting, like scenes of a movie. It appears real in the moment, but in time, none of it stands the test of time. Where can it be found? I can take a Kleenex box. Okay. In 1,000,000 years from now, what is this going to look like? Where is it going to be? It's going to be nothing. I could take a mug. It's going to be nothing, right? It's fleet. Where is all the people and characters and settings from 200,000 years ago? None of the landscapes even exist as they did. None of the people are still here, right? It all passes before us. What looks like solid matter, like a mouse, is even just a stubborn illusion and persistent illusion. Now, here's the thing. Imagine this. Imagine we all shrink to the size of an electron, okay? From that perspective, we would see that all of these physical objects are mostly empty anyways, right? That the ratio of matter to space is like a baseball inside an entire baseball park. It's mostly nothing out there. It's just a bunch of empty space. So, and if you were to hold your hand up in front of your face, right, it looks solid and stable, doesn't it? If you go like this, right, unless your hand is going like this because you just haven't had any breakfast yet today and you're starving, it looks pretty solid and stable, right?
Pretty solid.
But, but the truth is that even though we do that, and you can hold your hand up in front of your face, everything is just vibrating so much that it appears solid. It's kind of it's all just vibrating molecules. It's like an airplane propeller looks like a solid disc because of vibration. Tuning forks look like they have matter in between them, even though it's just an illusion, They create the vibration that there's a bigger mass existing there. So even though there's mostly empty space, everything vibrating creates this illusion that there's more mass there. But it's just very persistent, So it's like the world we see in everyday life is simply a convenient mirage to our senses, but the transiency of everything, like that my phone is just going to go away, that this book is just going to not exist one day. The transiency of all of it is proof of the unreality of all of it, right? Because what's real would be here for all and forever, so everything in this existence feels kind of real, but
Yes.
everything here just goes away. Everything in this room just goes away, right?
Which
Think
makes
about
it
everything
feel
we've
like a
seen
lot
change in our
smaller,
own
right?
lives, like babies became children. Yeah, buildings have toppled, marshes have dried up. Like people, animals, and plants, they all grow, change, and die. There's such an impermanence to everything around us, right? So it's all, none of our experiences are permanent, but we are permanent. We're in there in the realm of consciousness, experiencing it all. So, Vivekananda once said that everything is a whirlpool of molecules in constant change, sending impressions to the mind to create a continuous picture. Swami Vivekananda once said that. So that can be something to think about. Like, yeah, this is kind of like structurally evanescent, just like a movie picture. Like, oh man. And then when we take it so real, we suffer, just like when you get absorbed in a movie and the main character suffers and we suffer along with them. And then we need somebody to tap us on the shoulder and be like, it's just a movie. It's just calm
Yes,
down.
it's just a movie.
And then sometimes we need to do that with life. Like, oh my God, Monica, don't get so life obsessed. It's just life. This isn't the supreme reality,
It's true.
So that's something to think about. What about the idea of a projection booth in the movies? Have you ever looked back and seen the projection booth?
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that?
Curious
When you're at
George
a
over
movie and you
here.
realize it's all coming out of that beam of light.
I don't know. It just kind of feels surreal sometimes. It's like, oh, like, how is that projecting a movie or an image for me to see and watch and be entertained by,
Yeah. And we might say that there's a projection booth in the mind's eye too, that we aren't in the world, but the world is in us, because, everything you look at, you bring into creation through observer effect. Seeing is creating. Like reality is just manifested creation. If you weren't imagining, or reality is just manifested imagination. When you stop imagining things, they stop existing, right? Like everything we experience out there are just appearances in the mind. Without the mind, it can't exist anywhere, because we're not really apprehending the world out there, but rather we're constructing it. In physics, there's something called observer effect. And it's like we literally create matter. It's like it takes an observer to take the invisible energy state of an electron and bring it into a particular particle located in space and time. And it literally, we were plucking electrons out of the sea of possibilities simply by looking at it. So seeing is the ultimate creative act, right? And nothing could exist out there if it weren't being made out of mind. So we're at the center of our reality. It's kind of weird, but no matter where you go, you're the center of where you are. The whole universe seems to revolve around you, right? And you're not really looking out at what you see. What's happening is rays of light are bouncing off of molecules that make up the outer objects, and these are being hitting your eyes' photoreceptors, being transmitted back as messages. And then in our mind is creating the image of all this stuff going on, but we're actually seeing the objects on the inside, not on the outside. Like sound doesn't exist as we know it. There's just neurons firing in the brain. The brain creates these holographic images of things we perceive as real. We don't actually touch anything. The brain creates the perception that we do. We've created all of this inside of us. It's like we are the projection booth, which makes it so important that we decide to project in a way that's going to serve us, and see the good in everyone and everything if we want it to be a pleasurable show, right? Because if we're always looking for the bad and the faults, we're going to literally create it.
Right.
And it's going to be a movie we don't enjoy, right? Until someone's got to wake us up. Now, a lot of people might object to this. They might say, I couldn't have created all of this. There's no way I could have created all the world inside me. And I would say, you don't really know yourself enough to know what you can and can't do. You don't really know your own powers. You have never really investigated what you're capable of, and you don't really know what you're capable of. A lot of times we mistake the outer for the inner for the outer, and the outer for the inner. Like, consciousness really is the only reality, and the world only exists in the consciousness of the perceiver. It's kind of like Ramana Maharishi once said that just as a spider draws out the cobweb from within itself, and withdraws the cobweb back into itself, in the same way, the mind projects the world out of itself and absorbs it back into itself. So we are just passing through our own self-created projections. And once you realize the world is your projection, you're free of it. There's even this term in psychology. It's like a lot of times people are like seeing the worst in other people, but they're just projecting what is inside them.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard about that?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's
I don't know what the term is, but I've heard it.
Yeah, psychological projection. Right.
Oh.
So we tend to see what we expect to see. So the other thing is that all of this began with a beam of light. In the projection booth, it all began with a beam of light. And apparently in the creation story, God said, "Let there be light." Right. And out of the great cosmic light manifested the entire universe. But also scientists say that after the Big Bang, these subatomic particles they created an energy field, and then radiation cooled down, and gravity and electromagnetism brought some of these subatomic particles together to make atoms. And then as hydrogen atoms formed, some of these clouds accumulated, and as they thinned out, some of the photons escaped, and then light was created as we know it. So, but scientists said that, there was a moment when light literally was created, and the Bible says it in the beginning, the earth was without form and darkness, and then all of a sudden, let there be light, and there was light. So it's all just a play of light and darkness. But here's another thing that's just kind of like interesting. Have you ever noticed how there's like a fast forward button in life? Like when you're having fun, time speeds up.
Yes.
Yeah, that's just a little thing there. So I think a lot of it is kind of like, we're assembled here from backstage, but the world is like an illusory theater. Change requires a changeless backdrop for its existence. That's a tough concept to grasp. You can just park that one, and spend some time to think about it. But change requires a changeless backdrop, which means there must be a backstage or an ultimate reality before and beyond this fleeting surface level reality, right? Perhaps that's where we all assembled before we stepped out onto the stage of the human story. And maybe that's where we return when we leave the body. But, if we could see behind the scenes, we'd probably realize that this earth is just like a puppet show. It seems real, but, it'll have a dreamlike unreality when we're further ahead in future. And I think it seems real because pain makes it seem real. The stubborn persistence of the illusion makes it seem real. And we get absorbed in it just like we get absorbed in a movie, right? So Raymond Moody, I really respect Raymond Moody. And he once said that reality is an illusion with a purpose. It's an illusion so that we can learn our lessons of love. And I thought that was a very beautiful statement. And William Blake once said, to see a world in a grain of sand and a heaven in a wild flower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour, right? So it's just kind of like seeing things from a higher perspective can be very beautiful and freeing for us, right? Yes. So a lot of times, basically, we're too involved in the play to remember it's just a play sometimes. And sometimes we need to back up and be like, hold on, you're playing your character too well and you're suffering too much. Like, just remember, Everything goes away here. Everything changes and goes away in time. Perfection was not meant to be found here. This is just a theater. The divine director sent us all to be educated and entertained with these ever-changing dramas of life, but too often we forget they're just dream plays and we get overwhelmed. So let's go into discussion point 3. How are the scenes of our life kind of like scenes of a movie? What are your thoughts? How are the scenes of our life like scenes of a movie?
Well, I would say that there's like different stages too, right? Like they're all like pretty much not, they're pretty progressive in some ways. Like I'm just thinking of like the
Perfect.
human life and
Yeah, you're
yeah.
right. Yeah, time moves forward just like a movie progresses forward. The moments never stop. They keep
Yeah.
flowing forward through time and space, just like the frames of a motion picture. And every single moment is a result of the moment that came before it. And we're experiencing it all unfolding, right? And it's kind of
Yeah.
like, they say that all of time has already like occurred, like that there's time and is just kind of like an illusion, kind of like if you hold a DVD in your hand, the whole movie is on there, but we have to put it in the machine and hit play before we experience it in a time-like fashion. And in the same way that everything we're experiencing has to have already existed in its totality, we're just experiencing it in a forward manner, like watching a movie. But there is a DVD of total information that must have existed in order for things to play out as they are. The disc contains the entire story and we're just accessing it in a forward manner, right? So have you ever noticed too that similar to a movie, there are specific themes? Like there's a constant repetition of war, right? Or trouble, or love, or loss, or glory, gain, stupidity, suspense, confusion, sadness, fear. And then there's all these people laughing, dying, loving, fighting, crying, whatever, right? And all the same themes keep playing out. It's just a different cast.
Yeah.
Right? That's why I love reading books, because it
That's
can
a
kind
good
of give
thought.
us a window into a different time and place and how people play their roles and how it turned out for them. And it can give us insights into how we can play our role well with the scenes that are before us.
I like that.
So I think also, like, with the scenes, there has to be bad stuff or it would get boring, right? Our unlearned lessons create a plot twist of consequences. You might call that karma, right? We suffer as a result of our unlearned lessons. Have you ever seen the movie Back to the Future with Michael J. Fox?
I think I did a long time ago.
Okay, it's a great movie. All three of them I love, but his
Yeah.
character keeps getting into trouble because of pride. He doesn't like being called chicken. So every time he gets called a chicken, he does something he shouldn't do. And he suffers the consequences, right? But
Yeah.
it's kind of like a lot of us, because we have a fear of humiliation, we might do the wrong thing at times,
Right.
and there's a lot of bad stuff, like that happens. And there's a lot of suffering that results. But think about this, Yogananda once said that if a movie producer made a movie that was only angels and, showing them at morning, noon, and night every day, that movie producer would have to shut down their business, because the producer has to create variety in order to keep people's attention. And, the bad people are here to make the heroes look better. And we like the plot twists that are filled with action, and the danger and
True.
disaster, but we enjoy it because we know it's only a movie picture, right? So we can look at the scenes of our life in a similar way and create that healthy detachment, you know? And when the scenes get really bad, we can just remember how unreal it is. Yogananda said, life is entertaining when we do not take it too seriously. Life is entertaining when we do not take it too seriously. Have you ever noticed this, how sometimes our scenes seem like they're designed just for us?
Specifically the romance movies, yes.
Yeah.
That's one's for me.
There you go. There you go. And sometimes we got to do
Yeah.
the scenes until we get it right. Like
No,
if
I
we
know.
don't learn our lessons, the same issues come up just in future situations with different people. We repeat our mistakes until we get it right.
It's so true.
True or false, though, nobody has ever lived a perfect life all the time, really.
True.
You know, like maybe that's true. And maybe the director put us in the perfect training grounds to increase our self-understanding, to learn and to perfect ourselves. You know, and I feel like the scenes of our life are perfect for us to grow because we look at the scenes of our life through the lens of our own limiting beliefs, our own false assumptions, our own wrong desires and impulses and reactivity and whatever. So we don't see life as it really is. We see it as we think it should be. This shouldn't have happened. The weather shouldn't have been bad on this day because I went out for a hiking. Shouldn't have rained yesterday because I was getting married. This person should have kept that promise, blah, blah, blah. And we just keep viewing it in that way, right? And so these outside events may create friction, and that stuff needs to be purified inside of us. You know, these things in your life will happen to you to create discomfort, and that discomfort brings attention to our opportunities for improvement. You know, the outside issues serve to bring our inside issues to the surface so we can work on them. You know, if you're at disharmony with anything in your life, you'll probably attract it into your life until you learn the lessons that need to be learned. I think it's 1 Corinthians in the Bible, 10:13 says, you know, God is faithful and will not let you be tested beyond your strength. But with the testing, you will also provide the way out so you'll be able to endure it. So I think that's a really powerful line from the Bible that can kind of let us know, like, these scenes are set up, but you know what? You're bigger than the challenges you face. Right. And we play and there's comedic parts of our life. Have you ever lived in a moment of your life that just seems so comedic? Like you're just like, life is a comedy, right?
Many.
Or it's a tragedy, or it's a comic tragedy. I tell people this, everybody gets so upset when the Maple Leafs lose in the playoffs. I'm like, you think the Leafs are supposed to be an epic drama? They are a comic tragedy. And if you appreciate their performance as a comic tragedy, then when it happens and you see them blow a 3-1 lead to the Montreal Canadiens, even though they're supposed to win, it's just like, man, now you can laugh with it. Like, yeah, that's what they're doing right now. Right. I also think sometimes, have you ever noticed how sometimes you get the lines just right in the moments of your life? Like you just nail it. Like,
Yeah.
and other people do too. Like there was a moment, Francis of Assisi, they were going to take a red hot iron to poke his eyes with to help his vision, because that's how barbaric and savage medical care was at the day. They're like, oh, you got vision problems? We're going to burn your eyes with a red hot poker. Okay. So they were going to do that to Francis of Assisi. And he just like, once they take the poker from the furnace, he just like stands up and he's like, you know, brother fire, God made you beautiful and strong and useful. I pray you be courteous with me. Like, what a poetic way to handle that life moment. You just nailed it. It's the same way that Yogananda finished his poem, My India, at the Biltmore Hotel in front of a huge audience. And he talks about being grateful that he came here onto this earth and his feet touched the sod. And then he dropped dead right as he finished his poem. And I'm like, nailed it. You nailed that part. What a perfect death, right? Like,
wow.
So anyways, sometimes we get it just right. But I think the key thing here is that our developmental opportunities come to us as life problems in the scenes of our life. And every challenge in every scene of life is an opportunity to set a positive example on how to be more loving and wise and be a shining star, you know, similar to how an actor or actress can really nail it in the scenes of their life. And I think, you know, as much as we hate to admit it, the mystery and suspense keeps it exciting. We prefer to predict and control everything, but we don't really. Yes. We want to predict and control everything, but if you could predict and control everything in your life, where people go, what they say, what they do, and everybody does everything you say, like, sure, it'd be great for the first week. Right? Yeah. How long would it take before you're like, please give me some unpredictable problems? This is so boring. I want to hold my tongue out and strangle myself with it. Yeah. Right. So I think the divine playwright has concealed the nature of the plot. It's not straightforward. There's endless subplots and complexities. And it's all been cloaked behind confusing hints and explanations and events. And it's all been played out with an incalculable skill. But Yogananda said that, someday the director will lift for us the heavy curtain of illusion and play out the final scene of the divine drama. And when this happens, the glorious ending will be revealed at last. Right? So, and the Bhagavad Gita points out that, darkened human minds have many gross misconceptions about the nature of the divine plan for man's redemption. So a lot of times darkened human minds have these expectations that things should go differently.
Yes.
And so they resist the script as it unfolds, right? But a successful movie has suspense. It has struggle and success. It has these riddles and puzzles and everything that kind of confuses us at times. And that's what makes the triumphs all the much greater, right? So I think we should embrace the mysteries of life as being necessary to keep the human story interesting and engaging. And we should just use it to appreciate the skill of the divine director. As the Buddha once said, when you realize how perfect everything is, you'll tilt your head back and laugh at the sky. Right? So how about this? Discussion point 5. How is your role in life similar to a character role in a movie? What do you think? How is your role similar to a character role in a movie?
Well, if you think about it, like the topic, like how you mentioned impermanence, the character role in a movie is not permanent. Neither is ours. Like we're not here forever.
Yeah, character roles are not permanent. They are developing. A character develops, right? And you've played many roles. You were once baby Monica, right? Then you were once little girl Monica, and you played that role really well. And then you were teenage Monica. And, the whole time you've been Monica the coworker, or Monica the daughter, and Monica the friend, and Monica the hero, Monica the coach. You've played many roles in various plots and storylines. Right. And you played many roles very well. Like lots of people will say that it's like, oh, Monica's great. We love Monica. She's awesome. Right. So, and we can decide who we want to be and then decide to do our best to stay on script. And also I don't think anyone can take your place but you. And if they tried, they totally mess up the lines. If somebody said, okay, Monica, we're removing you from your life. We're bringing in this actress, and she's going to try to be you in all the scenes of your life. There's no way she's going to get the lines right. Nobody can be you but you. And we all wear many different costumes and disguises, right? You used to wear a baby body vehicle. Then you wore a kid body vehicle, a teen body vehicle. We have different skin colors are part of our costumes, hair colors,
right?
All part of our disguise, all these biological costumes in addition to clothing, right?
Right.
And we've also got these personas we take on, right? Your persona, Monica Sebasta, that's the character you're playing, but that's not really your name. That's the rumor your parents started. They said, hey, you're entering the human story. Guess what? You're this character, Monica Sebasta. They said to me, you're Brendan Fox. I didn't have a choice. I was just told this is the name I have to play, right?
This is your identity here.
Yeah. Here's who you're playing. Who knows what the heck your name was before you entered this realm, right?
Yes.
And then a lot of times we get too obsessed. We think we are the doctor, the lawyer, the teacher, the husband, the wife. And who are we really behind the act? Where were we before all of this, right? And I think that one of the key things is we can play our role in one of two ways. According to self-will, which is based on our desires, whims, impulses, and whatever, or we can play it according to divine will, which is how the director wants us to play it out. Playing out according to the director's wishes. We have that choice, right? We can just ask the director, how do you give me an understanding of what you want to happen here and give me the courage to do what I need to do here? We can make that choice, or we can just assume that we know better, just like an actor or an actress that decides, well, this is the script. I got a better idea. Here's what I'm going to say, right?
Which usually doesn't work out.
Yeah. I mean, it might work out in movies. I heard people like Jim Carrey and Bill Murray. I heard they're great at doing that, just taking the script, just doing their own thing. But
really,
yeah, I heard like sometimes they could just improvise and come up with great stuff that was just improvised. but they're
That's so
masters
cool.
of their craft. I think we're all still learning to be masters at being human in the human story, right? So but
Yeah.
maybe it would be helpful for us to get clear on the role we play, right? When you're clear on what you want to do and who you want to be, you can figure out how to do it better. Because otherwise, our performance gets hijacked by our whims, impulses, triggers, moods, and reactions. And then all of a sudden, we don't like who we're playing. We're like, I don't really like that I'm the person who blows up at everybody and complains all the time. And I'm playing this character and I don't like
Yeah.
it. I'm like a warning sign to everyone else on what not to do because they can see how unhappy I am.
Yeah.
We can create ourselves into who we want to be. We just have to decide what's important and make a sincere effort to keep the main thing the main thing. Self-awareness can lead to self-regulation, right? We can always check in on ourselves. Were my thoughts right today? Were my actions right? As there's a saying, not every great leader is born, but often great leaders are made. So I think if you can't lead yourself, how can you expect to lead others? You have to start by controlling some self-leadership here in terms of who we're playing in the human story, right? It's very important to be clear on what we stand for so that we don't blindly break our own rules and get clear on our values. So I think another discussion point could be, what do we want out of life? And who do we have to be to make that happen? What are some of the character qualities we should consider? So what are your thoughts? What are some of the things we should consider in terms of how we're going to play out our life, our role in this human story? What should we consider?
Well, like you said, I would say values for sure.
Yeah.
Like, no, yeah, just what you stand for can definitely direct you in many ways.
Absolutely. So be guided by principles, not desires. Many times we are guided by our desires, not principles. And you see people do a lot of things they shouldn't do because they want more recognition or popularity or more money or more whatever, right? And I think, we can always choose to do good or bad things on all actions. We can choose vice or virtue. You can decide to be a character who serves the light or serves the darkness, the negative or the positive, loving or hateful, truthful or untruthful, compassionate or judgmental. Like we can decide on that. I think also one thing is we can determine our right action for life, otherwise referred to as dharma. So I'd ask you this: how might you combine your passion with your experience and your usefulness to society? So passion plus experience plus usefulness to society, that would be considered your dharma or your right action forward. Maybe something to consider for career choices and where you go forward in your mission. Right?
I like.
So, and I think all of this is important because character is fate. Heraclitus once said, character is fate. Who you decide to be will determine the life experiences that come to you. Right? If you want to be the villain, you will endure the villain's punishment. Right? If you want to play the hero, you will also come up against challenges, but you will experience the hero's rewards. And I think it's important to be true to the role we're destined to play rather than trying to be somebody else. We don't want to destroy who we were meant to be. Everybody is like a different finger on the hand of humanity. Can one finger take the place of another? Right?
I like that one.
So somebody might say to you, Monica, you should be a lawyer. It's a very, financially stable position. You're going to have to argue a lot and develop your argumentation muscles. Sometimes you might have to bend the truth, but, I think you should become a lawyer, even though being an advocate is not natural to who you are, right? We got to decide whose happiness should come first. Your own in being true to yourself, or the happiness of those who have ideas on how they think we should live our life. Whose happiness comes first in your life, right? So I think the next discussion point is kind of like, who am I being? Like, we should ask ourselves, are my thoughts right? Are my actions right? Am I being the person I want to be? Am I focused on what can I get instead of how can I serve? Am I being true to myself, or am I going against the grain of who I am? Like every new life is a new thing under the sun that's never been lived before and never will again. Right? You and anyone watching this recording are a one-of-a-kind performance in the human story. No one else has lived a life exactly like yours, right? Nobody else looks exactly like you do, maybe unless you're a twin, right? No one else has a personality exactly like yours. Nobody else can touch the people in your life in the way that you can. You're a one-of-a-kind performance in all of time and space.
Which is such a beautiful thing.
Yeah. And I think it can help us to honor who we are and what we're here to do. And remember, never get discouraged. You are a developing character in this story. Character development is an ongoing process. You're a work in progress. You can always change your patterns and behaviors. Once you realize, hey, living this way doesn't work, I can live a different way, right? And sometimes it is suffering that brings us wisdom. So the suffering serves a good purpose. It's like, in Alcoholics Anonymous, they might say you got to hit rock bottom before you change. So sometimes it's important to honor that rock bottom and the suffering we endure can serve a greater purpose and be a stepping stone to a triumph in life. Because suffering brings wisdom, and then wisdom can eventually bring us joy. That comes from Asha Nayaswamy, who I think is one of the most beautiful souls. She's got a YouTube channel. I watch her YouTube channel all the time.
Really?
But yeah, so I think an important thing to consider is, what is my to-be list? What is the to-do list for my to-be list? What sorts of things do I need to do to play my role well? What sort of things do I need to do? Can you think of any examples of that? Like, anything come to mind? What do you need to do to be the person
for to
you want
do
to
versus to be?
What do you need to do to be the person you want to be?
Well, for me, I'm just thinking of it's like just staying grounded.
Yeah, love it.
And not getting too caught up in the facade.
Yeah. So take some time and space to consider how you're going to show up in the world rather than just showing up and improvising. Yeah. Right? Maybe think about the example you want to set for others. You build your character with effort and artistry. You can't really be a good person unless you're going to put in a sincere effort to be a good person. An archer is unlikely to hit a target that they didn't aim for, right? So Dolly Parton once said, find out who you are, then do it on purpose. So we want to think about, do you want to be somebody who lifts people up or puts them down? Do you want to be somebody who's got their priorities in order? Do you want to be polite or rude to strangers? Do you want to be somebody who sees the best or imagines the worst? I think this is important, to make an effort to be the star of your life in every single moment. Remember that whenever and wherever there is a person in front of you, there's an opportunity to play the good guy or good girl through acts of kindness and generosity of spirit. Figure out what people need and how you might be able to help, right? And find fulfillment in who you are being, right? Find your worth in the fact that you have capacity to be loving and helpful to others. And in every single moment of your life, just figure out a way to be loving and helpful to others. That is a really heroic role in the human story. Loving people without condition, thinking not what you can get, but what you can give, right? I think one of the things I like to do is I like to remember that, in order to be who I want to be, I like to remember that nothing can take away your inner peace if you don't allow it, right? Nothing can take away your inner peace if you don't allow it. There you go. Absolutely. And this comes from Yogananda. And one of my favorite stories about him was that apparently he was walking through, I think it was LA, and he was walking through like some sort of alleyway with somebody who was escorting him, and a couple like thugs came out of nowhere, and I think they had guns, and they said, give us your wallet. And Yogananda just hands out his wallet like this. He's like, no problem. You can take my wallet, but there's one thing you can't take. And the thugs are like confused. They're like, what's that? And he's like, my inner peace. And then the thugs were like, he's crazy. Let's get out of here. And I think they ran around a corner and got arrested or something. And I think maybe the cops saw Yogananda go by, and they're like, what happened? These are violent criminals. And Yogananda's just like, oh, we came to an understanding, like, think about how cool he played that. He was held up at gunpoint. Like, you're not going to take away my. And so what I've done is I've taken great inspiration from Yogananda. And I imagine when I go into my life that my inner peace is like a football and I got to make sure I don't fumble it. And if I do, I got to recover it right away or get help from a teammate to recover it. And that's how I go into my day. My life is just like a game of football, and the touchdown, I'm going all the way to the end and I'm trying to hang on to the ball of inner peace the whole time, right? That is my to-do list for my to-be list. And then I think, taking responsibility for our lives and extreme ownership moment to moment, and, taking delight and enjoyment and self-improvement. These are big things that can help us. And I think an important thing is this. I remind myself of this, that, you matter. I matter. Anyone watching this recording matters. And we are therefore obliged to honor ourselves, because some souls chose to be in this part of the universe at this time in history, in large part because you are here. And if you won't play your role, who can play it for you? Who can better be you than you? There'll never be another you. You're the only one. You're part of humanity's answer to save people from suffering. You matter a lot. So we need to, do you and be you for your fans, your friends, your family, future friends, family, everything. Give them what they came for, your best performance. Be a star performer in the scenes of your life. There's room enough for us all to be our best selves out there. And when we do, the whole world benefits from our unique gifts, offerings, and contributions to the total human experience, right? You are given this life because you have the capability to handle it. The divine director knows you better than you know yourself. They knew who you were before you even stepped into this role. You do not. Like, think about that. If I were to say, Monica, where were you 2 years before you were born? You're like, darned if I know, right? The director knows before they casted you for this role. Oscar Wilde once said also, be yourself, everybody else is taken.
Oh, yes. That's a good one.
Right? So, I think we need to create healthy detachment from our life, get clear on the role we want to, on how to play our parts and have the courage to play it. Right? And just know that all these difficulties are opportunities to assume the right mental attitude in all circumstances. And just like being an actor, actress in a film, you don't complain about your role. You just perform it to the best of your ability, no matter how big or small that role is. Just play it out to the best of your ability. We need all kinds of roles, family man, businesswoman, scrubbing the floor, taking out the garbage, walking a red carpet. We need everyone to play all these roles well. Right? Quality of performance is all that matters. So, and I think a part of it is one of the things I do. I always hold my beliefs lightly because I remind myself I have great capacity to fool myself, right? In all things. In all things. I might think that this is a burgundy shirt. It's not. It's anything but burgundy. Burgundy is what's being reflected. Burgundy is not inherent. I might think that I dropped my phone downward. I didn't. I dropped it towards the center of the earth. If everybody is dropping their phone like this, it goes in the same direction. So there's so many ways in which I might confuse myself. So it's important to hold my beliefs lightly. Always use truth through experience and stay curious. There's always more to learn. As I always say, the universe is infinite and so is my ignorance. Right?
Yeah. You always have a good spin on words.
Yeah. And I think it's important to let go of the need to be somebody else. Let go of the need to be somebody else. And stand strong in your principles during times of challenge. Right? Martin Luther King once said the ultimate measure of a person is not where they stand in moments of confidence, but where they stand at times of challenge and controversy. Right? So, and we could decide who we can role model ourselves after. If you decided you wanted to role model yourself after St. Francis of Assisi, never judge anybody, be a brother and sister to all, find God and help others find God. If you wanted to role model yourself after Yogananda, respect everyone, love everyone, keep a sense of humor. If you wanted to role model yourself after Jesus, then learn how to be perfect. Learn how to be better. Learn to be in the world, but not of it. Don't get too obsessed with the world. Just know that there's a greater kingdom or world is not here, right? Forsake the worldly glory and relate to a reality greater than this one, relate to the reality of other people and see their innocence. I think those are all beautiful principles in which we can role model ourselves after Jesus, right? Avoid the ego, right? So here's a quote I have on my computer from Yogananda that I love. I love this one. And this quote was really the inspiration for this talk, right? He said, accept life as a motion picture. We are both viewers and actors through the roles we play, demonstrating the wisdom we have gained in our lives. How many adventure stories we live through, how many thrillers, how many sweet stories balanced by horror movies. Nothing in life is real in itself. Learn to look upon whatever happens to you as if nothing can touch you, the inner soul. Accept every change in life, have a calm inner detachment, entertain with style, play heroically when something goes wrong in your life, patiently endure, seek methods to rise above every test that is given you. And that comes from Paramahansa Yogananda in the book Whispers from Eternity.
Wow.
So, and I love that quote. I'm like, oh, he nailed it. He had such brilliance. So I think we want to think about who is our supporting cast. For me, Yogananda is a huge supporting cast for me. I know that the life that he lived, he is a helper and ally and gives power and strength to the life I'm trying to live now, right? So we need to know, like, who are those that can be allies and supporting characters for us? Who are the teachers and mentors that can bring out our best and help us understand our scenes and how to play them well? But we also need to know, like, who obstructs our efforts to create goodness in the world? Who is there to be a bad influence and draw us away from being a good character? And how might we protect ourselves and set healthy boundaries? So, and then, how might we play to this invisible audience? I think there's an ancient saying, nothing ever happens without an onlooker. Just imagine that there are legions of invisible fans in the spirit realm. Your biggest fan club is one you haven't even seen yet, right? It's the universal witness. It's all the angels that are watching this, like watching a reality show. There are no secrets, really. Every thought and deed is a matter of record. So in Matthew 10:29-30, Jesus said that not even a single sparrow can fall to the ground without God knowing it, and even the very hairs on your head are all numbered. So just live as though you've got this invisible audience that can see everything you're doing all the time, right? So do the right thing when nobody's looking. Just imagine this invisible audience. Okay? And what are your thoughts on the idea of a divine director or a divine producer? What are your thoughts on that?
I think just the idea of a divine director just gives you in some ways some sort of peace as well, because it's like I don't have as much control as I think I have, and there's always a greater plan, right? Like it's like a trusting something. Yeah, it helps you trust in the greater picture a little bit more, just knowing that.
Absolutely. And the universe can't possibly happen by happenstance. There must be an intentional and intelligent creative source behind it all. Just as we know wind is real through its effects, we know that there's a producer through its effects of creating these intelligent beings and creatures and nature and ecosystems. There's an intelligence that arranged everything with such a mathematical harmony. The entire universe is an engineering marvel that is the product of a divine director and producer who set it all in motion, with the supporting cast of the 5 elements, right? Of earth, fire, water, air, ether, right? And all the intelligent forces behind it all. So I think, the best story in the humans is the human story. We just have to learn how to appreciate it and learn how to love everything. So we want to look for evidence of the divine director through, other people who say and give us the right ideas when we need it and the right wisdom when we need it. And through the coincidences that serve us and the good thoughts that come to our mind randomly, the divine director is whispering them into our consciousness. Even our conscience itself is like the divine director giving us instruction. Like it gives encouragement. Hey, you played that role well, when our conscience tells us we did a good thing. Or then our conscience says, you know, you really shouldn't have said those things to those people. That's the divine director on the inside trying to guide us to play our role well, you know? So, and how might we best harmonize with the divine director? I think a good idea is to even pray about it. Make a plea for understanding on how to play your part according to the wishes of the director, right? Let the director direct. Instead of thinking, what do I want to happen? Try thinking, what is trying to happen here?
Right.
And try to align ourselves with the will of the director. You know, a lot of things that come into our lives by themselves, just know that if something comes into your life and you had nothing to do with it, just assume it comes from the divine director. And ask yourself, what is trying to happen here? You know, like, not what did I want to happen? For me, this was a big part with all my wildlife stuff. I wasn't trying to have these friendly experiences with wild animals. They were coming to me and doing it. And I was like, what's trying to happen here? Why am I? Yeah. And then there's a pandemic and everyone's unhappy. So I tried posting it to uplift everybody. And I'm like, oh, now I see what's trying to happen here. Right. But I didn't understand. I was just rolling with it. I'm like, I've not been into nature. I'm not a nature and environment person. I worked in the health industry. I don't know what half these animals are like, or anything about them. Right.
Yes.
But then I can see that I'm just trying to harmonize with the divine director and what they're trying to use me for. Right. Yeah. So I think we want to just not get absorbed in the likes and dislikes of our role in the moment. Just be humble, you know, just try not to, you know, we should refrain from judgment because we have a very limited understanding of the script. We can't see across all space and time. So we have to trust the director. Oftentimes we judge the script on our likes and dislikes of the moment, but we should never judge the moment because a lot of times the stuff we didn't like that happened to us made us who we are today. We should never judge the moment. We should accept these plot twists, turns, and unpredictability and all the discomforts. It's what made us who we are today and what gave us strength. You know, it's like when you're even like reading a novel or watching a movie and the hero's being mistreated and the villain's winning, you don't get angry with the author, do you? Or the producer? No, you know, in the final chapter, it's all going to turn out. Yeah. Not that everything always turns out at the end of every incarnation, but we can't see across all space and time how it's going to all turn out and be okay in the end. Right? So I think that, you know, and for me, I think a good part of harmonizing with the creator is I always ask what's good about this for every situation. Because in honoring the creation and the story, I'm honoring the creator who created all things and said it was good. I always ask myself what can be learned here because I think we suffer the consequences of our unlearned lessons. So I want to maximize my learning curve. And then I always ask, how can I make it better? How am I being challenged to evolve? So whenever there's a challenge in life, in any of my scenes of life, I always ask what's good about this? What can be learned? How can I make it better? And I rep them out to fatigue. And then I go in and I play my role based on the wisdom that came through those three questions, you know? So 100%. Yeah, I think we need to accept the mysteries of life rather than resenting it, you know, train ourselves to trust the big picture, right? And then I think there are some things we probably just need to remember moving forward. Okay, so this is a very important topic, you know, viewing your life as a movie. What do you think are some of the key takeaways or things we need to remember as we move forward with our lives? What do you think are some of the key things?
Well, in terms of like concepts, I would say like healthy detachment. And your role especially, like, and I would say even in terms of like just our discussion, just like, you know, staying true to like your divine role as opposed to just like the illusion of what the role should be or what you think it should be.
Excellent. Love it.
Yeah, those would be the two.
Yeah, so kind of like look upon this life with the same sense of detachment and enjoyment as a movie, right? Remember, it's just a play. You didn't come from here. You're not staying here. Nothing is here forever, right?
Yeah.
So I think, you know, and then just stay detached from the events. And it's kind of like when you dream half awake or you're playing in a movie, but you're acting, but you're aware that you're acting in a story, kind of like living that way because We don't want to give reality to nightmares. You know, when life is hard, we don't want to give too much reality to it. And remind ourselves, this is something I'll say when something happens that's very unwelcomed. I would just say, look, this reality is so overrated. I'm glad it's not the ultimate reality, right? I'm glad I'm just going to wake up someday from this reality and be like, whew, that was just a dream of being human. Being named Brendan Fox, that was just a dream.
Yeah.
You know, like Einstein said, there's something very suspicious because everything about space, everything comes out of it and everything disappears back into it. Like, think about that. Something very suspicious going on here. It's like we're coming from backstage somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, so I think it can also help to remember to own our role. Don't forget to be who you're supposed to be. And that every challenge of your life is an opportunity to play your role well. Get the lines right. Get the actions right. Be the star in every moment of your life. And then just don't be afraid. Like, don't be a worldly person. You are spirit. You're not flesh. You're a divine being, immortal. No matter what happens, stay self-aware that you've got a real character that's be constantly reminded of your immortal nature as spirit, not flesh, right? Align your will with the will of the director. Remember divine will instead of self-will. Don't get too attached to the props, right? You wouldn't go onto a stage and try to collect all the props on stage and take them backstage with you. In the same way we do this with fancy cars and big homes and all the possessions. We can't take any of the stuff backstage. You know, when you die, you got to give everything back. Don't ruin your performance by trying to cling to all the props the whole time. All of them are structurally evanescent anyways. You know, you might think, oh, I got this great new phone. It's structurally evanescent. It's going to be dust one day. Don't cling to the props, right? Everything in this world isn't really so real. It's a symbol of a higher reality. So, and then just stay aware. Be an observer of self. Examine your performance daily. How did I do today? You know, what do I want to try next? Right? That's called the examines. It comes from St. Ignatius. Like, just examine yourself daily in your performance. Replay the events of the day and ask yourself what you might want to try next time. Right? And then, you know, when you become frustrated, just remember that life sometimes is supposed to be a comedy. Voltaire once said that God is a comedian playing to an audience that's too afraid to laugh. So we need to remember not to take life so seriously. It's just a divine show. It's God's movie. It's God's play, right? You know, and when it's getting too serious, just look back into the projection booth in meditation. And as a wave recedes back into the ocean, just recede back into the oneness of the omnipresence and expand yourself in who and what you really are. So I got another quote by Yogananda on my computer here that I want to read for you because I think it's brilliant. Yogananda said, "We must not take our earthly experiences too seriously either, for they are nothing but a series of vast dream movies shown to us to entertain us. The Heavenly Father meant to entertain and educate us as immortal children with a variety of earthly movies. We must behold comedies, tragedies, and newsreels of life's movies with an entertained, joyous attitude and learn from them without being overcome by their emotional impact." Like, sometimes it's important just to remember that, because at some point the director is going to call cut and our movie ends and we have to retire back scene. We don't know when it's going to be cut, right? And then there will be a spiritual banquet at the end of life, and we're not going to celebrate those who made the most money or those who scored the most goals in hockey. We're going to celebrate those who really showed how to succeed at living a human life, which really comes down to loving greatly, right? And then death is just like going backstage, right? So that we can take on new roles and play in new dramas on the stage of life, right? So
I like that too.
But I won't talk too much about that because that can run into people's beliefs and stuff like that. But anyway, in conclusion, we need to acknowledge that there's a supreme reality. You know, as Jesus said, that my kingdom is not of this world. He was relating to a greater reality than this one, which helped him endure the great injustices he faced, right? We need to acknowledge who we really are. We are not the characters we're playing. We're something greater than that, right? We need to be involved in this story and do it well, but remain detached at the same time. And no matter what happens, stay self-aware. Self-awareness leads to self-regulation. We can play our role better as long as we're evaluating our performance, right? But let's not get too involved in Maya or this panorama of life experiences and just kind of look at it, continue to look at it as an intricate cosmic movie, right? Any other final thoughts, key takeaways?
I guess well, yeah, one of the last things that I really like that you brought up in the discussion was just we're not here for perfection. Yeah.
Yes.
I think that's a really solid point.
Yes, yeah. We're not, this is not the place to lay down for perfection. Everyone's trying to make things perfect in this world. Things are always falling apart.
Yeah.
And proving to you. And if there's one thing out there that helps you create detachment from having a perfect world, it's mosquitoes.
Yes.
Because mosquitoes will always make it uncomfortable to get too comfortable here, right?
Yeah.
And Yogananda said this, mosquitoes' purpose is to prevent us from getting too attached to this reality, because as imperfect as this reality is, so many of us suffer spiritual amnesia. And I think that, A Course in Miracles said that our greatest tool for changing the world is our capacity to change our mind about the world, because thought is the creative level of things. So we just need to change the way we think about the world. And we can look at the world as a movie in which we can courageously face the challenges instead of getting discouraged by them. Swami Kriyananda in The Rubaiyat by Omar Khayyam said that real life is the original motion picture performance. Real life is the original motion picture performance. This reality, and I think this reality is totally overrated. We shouldn't take it too seriously, but take your performance seriously and find great joy in who you are being. Awesome. So there's a bunch of other follow-up discussions that would complement this. Follow-up discussions on karma, reincarnation, the examines. So we'll get into those in future chats. But other than that, this is a good little timeout on the human story so that we can kind of hey, let's remember to all stay on script. Figure out who you want to be and stay on script. And then just remember not to take this stuff too seriously. It's just a performance, a human performance.
100%.
Well, Monica, I think you did a 10 out of 10 awesome job in performing your role today and demonstrating, humility and ambition to play your role well, and even caring and concern for other people who might watch this recording, that, we film this and record it to share it with other people because we care about other people. And in some way, we hope that this conversation can add value to other souls out there. And in some way, we hope that this conversation can benefit suffering humanity in whatever way it can. And it gives greater meaning to our own journey, that as we gain greater understanding that liberates us from suffering, we try to pass that on to others, because other beings have passed it on to us. And you've heard me reference a whole bunch of them in today's talk. I collected notes from all of these great thinkers who have benefited us through their life example and their shared wisdom while they were here on earth. And if anything is good about today's recording, it is a credit and testament to those beings who did their role well. They gave insights we can share here in today's conversation. None of this really comes from me. It's all just coming through me. I'm just sharing the great wisdom of the masters with today's call. And that's all I'm trying to do here, humbly, in the best way I can.
I love it. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right. So we're going back into the human movie. Just remember today, just live with that awareness in the scenes of your life. Be the star performer. Decide, are you going to be on the team that's there for the light or the darkness? And then decide how to play that role well. I'm rooting for you in the game of life and the human story. Let's do go team on 3. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Go team.
Our team. Thank you.
Take care.